right, at this time, I'm going to have a discussion about what makes good leadership, led by Dr. Nelson Adams. Dr. Adams, I'll introduce as the panel comes up here. Dr. Adams is the chairman of the board of Meharry Medical College. A 1978 graduate of Meharry, Dr. Adams is a board-certified obstetrician gynecologist. He served on the Meharry board since 2005, and most recently as vice chairman. He's the founder and president and chairman of Access Health Solutions, a managed care company serving 26 counties in Florida. And while they get set, I did want to take a look at some elements. Well, maybe I won't, because somehow my slides have disappeared here. Let's see if I can. I looked up the definition of leadership, and this goes very quickly. Here are two definitions that I found. The best executive, in essence, leader, is one who has a sense enough to pick good men to do what he wants done, and the self-restraint to keep him from meddling with them while they do it. Another definition is when trouble arises and things look bad, there's always one individual who perceives a solution and is willing to take command. Very often, that person is crazy. I have a couple of cartoons here. Here's one that said he's a little old school, but he's got great leadership qualities. Here's another one that says, I'm not sure the congregation appreciates his leadership style. Here's a third one that says, your bad attitude was starting to affect others, and that's not much better. And here's one that talks about leadership. I'm going to skip this one to go to my favorite, the emergence of a leader. With all these people going over the cliff, one leader says, whoa, wait a minute. So this time, Dr. Adams, what'd you take?
Thank you so much, Dr. Lenore. Good afternoon. You know, where there is no vision, the people perish. Let us pause now and say thank you to Dr. Penn, President of the Past Presidents Council, and Dr. Michael Lenore for having the vision to see the necessity of us coming together and focusing on leadership. Join me in a round of applause for our leaders. Some of you know I'm a Baptist preacher as well. I'm not going to preach, don't worry. But there's a song that some of you may have heard before that I think is appropriate as we tee up this conversation. It's a song that says, a charge to keep I have. The verse that I really like is it says, to serve this present age, my calling to fulfill. In many ways, the reason that we are here today and the reason that we focus on leadership is because it is indeed a calling, but that calling is to serve. Oftentimes we talk about effective leadership. I think you could do a double arrow back and forth between effective leadership and servant leadership. And so today I've got some distinguished colleagues who have a story to tell. It's their story, but you know, the more things change, oftentimes the more they stay the same. Rodney gave us an excellent overview in very short fashion of some of the history, the 5,000-year history, mind you, of the National Medical Association. What is clear is that some of the issues that have existed back yonder still exist. The present age still needs to be served. And it's not about us as individuals, it's about us as a people. There are some things that I think are particularly important and foundational if we look at effective leadership. We all are success-oriented and always want to get A's, but there are 4 C's that I would like to use to frame our discussion this afternoon. Because these 4 C's are foundational. They are required if you are to be an effective leader. The first C is competence. Hello, competence. If you are not prepared, then you ought not attempt to do that job. The second C is compassion. We are indeed our brothers and sisters' keepers. Third C, commitment. I can assure you that there will be times, leaders, when you will do more and make less, but your commitment will see you through. The last C is the one that we so often struggle with. It's one that I struggle with. Yet I'm reminded that no man, no woman, no organization, no institution is an island. None of us can do it alone. That's collaboration. We need each other. We need other organizations. We need other people. We need one another. With those thoughts in mind, I'd like for our panelists to frame their comments, and each of us have a story. Each of our experiences as president has been a little bit different. I came in at a time when we had an executive director who was also a physician. He was not of African descent. He never saw a microphone that he did not like. And we had a home. We actually had an office building in Washington. We were in a different era. Things were pretty good, but I'm reminded of an African proverb that resonates with me at this time, and hopefully it will resonate with you as I bring this panel forward. Just because the water is calm does not mean that the crocodiles have gone. With that, their perspectives on effective leadership. We will hear first from, to my right, Dr. Carolyn Barley-Britton. Then we will hear from the gentleman to my left, Dr. Ron Bailey, and closing out will be a gentleman, a scholar, the elder statesman of the panel, in fact, Dr. Statesman, I could have left the elder off, Dr. Randall Morgan. Please hear them.
So I'll transition and say good afternoon, everyone. And I'd like to thank Dr. Lenore for his leadership in bringing this forward. I think this is a very necessary conversation, and as this inaugural gets through, I hope that we will also hear from you those things that will make it better going forward, because not only do you need to hear from people, we need to have a bidirectional conversation. And I think that's where this is going to go in the future. But laying the groundwork for this is really very important. I think looking at myself in leadership in anything was something I did not think I would ever really do. I was actually naturally pretty much a behind-the-scenes person. That's where I like to play. I would help someone to be effective if I thought the project was good, but I really didn't want to be in front. And that's because, unbelievably, I was actually quite shy as a child. I liked to read, I wrote poetry, I read all the time, and I could think 100% of the time. And so being in my own space was really quite comfortable for me. Well, at 16, when I'm leaving home to go to college, my mother looks at me and she says, "Now, Carolyn, you know, you're cute, but you're not that cute. You're smart, but you're not that smart, so you better be nice to people." And let me tell you something else. You've had opportunities. You're going to have opportunities. You're going to an integrated school. I come from a segregated school. She says, and people are going to look at you, and how you are and how you behave is what they're going to think of black people. And I'm thinking to myself, well, they'd have to be out of their minds. I'm nobody. And she said, and the other thing, you will have opportunities to be a place where we have not been. It is your responsibility to realize that just because we haven't been there doesn't mean that we could not have been there. So when you are there, it is your responsibility to speak for those who could not enter that room. Now, at 16, I really didn't understand what that would mean or how that would play out in my life. And it played out in my life in the NMA, quite by accident. So I think of myself many ways as an accidental leader, because I started out in the medical society, the Susan Smith McKinney Medical Society, and I did all their events for them. I did every event. I did the Honoring of Women event. I wrote the invitations. I did the programming. I put together programs to start to mentor and to network with young students, trying to identify them. I call all the deans. I try to get all the names of all the women graduates. I held an annual luncheon. Even sometimes I even cooked the food. So that's where I started. And then I transitioned through doing local leadership and coming up through doing other things. I came to my first NMA meetings. I walked into a raucous House of Delegates meeting, and I never came back for many years until Yvonne Crisfield ran for president. By that time, I was active in the local medical society. She says, "You've got to join the NMA." And I said, "Oh, I don't think so." I was like the young people today. I understand them. I don't need to join the NMA. And so she finally talks me into it. I joined the NMA. I come to a meeting in Hawaii, and I look around. I go, "This is great." Not only is it great, the seriousness of the physicians here, the abilities that they have, but also the mission statement and our need to be represented could only be fulfilled by the NMA. And that became clear to me. So I began doing exactly what Dr. Penn said. I worked in some of the little-known committees in the House of Delegates. I was on a committee on international affairs. I sat on a task force to identify the areas that the NMA should focus on for disease states. And I remember sitting there with Dusty Sanders, who later became president.
And really a full spirit, I think, of confidence in themselves and their ability. And that really, for the last 2 decades or more, has really spirited me to want to do more and really be more. Sergeant Bright and I were in the car this morning discussing a bit about our past and how much of that has helped both of us, really, in many regards, grow toward not only professional careers that have been successful, but academic careers in that regard as well. I think another consideration for me in effective leadership has been the opportunity to provide mentorship of others. And I think really has, in many regards, also been a component, I think, of energy determination, almost the gasoline that further propels the mentor to help really foster, I think, much of the energy that it takes to kind of keep going. Really nothing greater, I think, for many of us than to see young persons so we can actually help push them forward. It helps us remember how much that has actually helped us. I'm someone who owes a tremendous debt of gratitude for those who have helped me in many regards, and I often will say that going to my first NMA meeting in Chicago in Atlanta in '85, but being elected as the secretary of the psychiatry section in 1986 really means a lot. There are a lot of persons who were my senior who elected me to a leadership position 1 year after I actually started. I hope I've actually paid them by putting 20 years of volunteer work into the organization. So since then, but for many of you who might think about going into leadership, so I'm very happy to see this full room today, recognize that there's a value in the concept of grassroots paying your dues. And very often those dues require not only a few months or years, maybe very often a few decades to really earn your stripes. And I think that putting time in matters. To groups like these who, I think of our forefathers, really recognize that you put your heart into the NMA and it gives you much more back, I think, many more than you put in. That sort of, in many regards, has been my experience. I also think, though, that the additional value of the NMA is that it teaches you some things that you just don't get other places. It may in part be what I think Lenore was saying earlier. One caveat that I often will comment on is I'm a 53-year-old black man now with 4 past colonoscopies. And I was at a regional meeting once, I think we were in Jamaica or what have you, and I heard a GI doctor have a discussion about how there was data that implied that African Americans actually have right-sided colon polyps more often than non-African Americans, and that may lead to more colon cancer. And you may not actually hear that type data about this small, unique group different than others. But for a person who's had a family history of colon cancer that's actually led to early mortality, that's actually very unique. I've spent my entire life in academic settings where mortality issues are discussed regularly. I actually never heard that. I try regularly, at least once a month, to go to an academic lecture that's not about psychiatry, and I've actually never heard that type of information. So I think I've actually learned a great deal about non-psychiatric medicine in the NMA from doctors like yourselves who are not in psychiatry. Another, I think, additional benefit of being in a group like the NMA. So leadership actually, I think, provides an additional degree, I think, of scholarly learning in a setting that you might not get in other settings, including in other academic type venues. I think a fourth value of the NMA for me has been this multi-determinant consideration, I think, of how our organization works. I learned different things at regional meetings and state meetings than what I gained at the national meeting. Regional meetings, I think there's different levels of leadership. I think different levels, I think, of interpersonal engagement. I think the type, I think, of interactions provide a various degree of value of engagement. I think Nelson's point about collaboration in these 4 C's is also enhanced. So I encourage all of you to avail yourselves of those different types of settings. They may be structured, I think, differently, and Michael and things going to speak about that here at the end. And I think that's done on purpose to provide, I think, a representative degree of value that has, I think, enhanced utility, I think, for all. I made a few points here, this concern regarding respect for persons. And I think that is a point that I think does require some consideration. We all can be type A personalities, persons who I think are not only leaders, but I think highest level leaders in our own settings, in our own homes, in our own work-related settings. And that certainly can lead, I think, to some intensity of value that can be lead to some structured concerns. We've got to find ways to, I think, channel those issues in a more positive and progressive manner in our dealings, legislatively, academically, what have you here, for the best value for the NMA, so it doesn't become strife-oriented or conflict-laden, but utility-focused. We don't need and value conflict and discord, but we need operational utility to enhance what we offer, I think, for our organization. Some of the difficulties I've experienced, I think that we all have experienced, are to find ways to bring all of that collective energy and to channel it in a more positive way. So I'd encourage all young potential leaders to find ways to aggregate toward, I think, a common theme, a common mean that I think is more positive and more progressive, to think that I think our best days are ahead of us, to recognize that I think what the NMA stands for has more utility, I think, going forward, many more than even in the past, and appreciate that what you have to offer, standing, I think, on the shoulders of giants, is not only essential, important, but I think essential for ourselves, for physicians in the future, I think, but the entirety of our community. I end by saying that I'm also someone who now is a father of a physician. I'm remarkably proud of all 3 of my children, but I do have one child who's just begun her 2nd year of a orthopedic surgery residency. Only one mistake she made in her life, she didn't go into psychiatry, but everybody can go to psychiatry. But I do recognize that now I think differently about this whole issue of medicine. You know, I need her to be educated well. I need her to think from what she hears from other doctors about the utility of what my mother always called, you know, the therapeutic alliance and bedside manner. I need her to make sure she's recognized the utility of being cared for and geared in the right setting or the right place. All key issues that you think about differently, I think, as a parent of a doctor, let alone a doctor who kind of takes care of patients. So these multi-generational roles that I find myself in now at age 53, almost 54, as Sid and I were discussing today, I think really kind of changes not only the graying of my hair, but also I think in regards to the maturing of my thoughts. And I think all of that, I think, also makes me, in many regards, much more reflective as I see young people in the audience, as I think about how you will be our leaders of the organization, one that I love and care for very dearly, and I appreciate, I think, the importance of what you bring to our organization kind of going forward. So thank you for being here today, and I thank you for what you do for our organization in the future. I appreciate you very much.
Thank you, Ron.
Good afternoon. I would like to also thank you all for coming and participating in this maiden voyage of learning about leadership, and specifically with the National Medical Association. Leaders are committed individuals who have a significant interest in and a passion for their organization. Leaders can be volunteers of the organization who choose to serve, or members of the organization who are selected by others in the organization to take a leadership position. And so approximately 35 years ago, I was selected by friends in Chicago who were fairly influential in that they didn't accept no as an answer, to begin leadership in the National Medical Association by taking a committee appointment in the House of Delegates and moving up through that process. And for the last 31 or 2 years, I have served as some form of national leadership with the National Medical Association. But it wasn't that I sought the position, it was that I was sought by others in the organization, and I was encouraged and recognized for some skill set, even though most people in the organization at that time, in 1985 and 86, did not even know my name. So I think it's important for any leader, specifically in the National Medical Association, to think of three things. One is know your personnel. Know the other members of the leadership team. Know the strengths and the weakness of the leadership team. And also to have a shared, exhibit collegiality of the leader with each of those team members, as well as the staff and members of the organization. And so for me, the experience of 6 years of leadership in the House of Delegates really explained to me all that I needed to know about the National Medical Association to become a leader. Because for one thing, I knew all of the members of the House of Delegates, I knew all the committee chairs, I knew all the council chairs, I knew what they were interested in, I knew their strengths and their weaknesses. And by the time I then worked, after I had been at the podium for 4 to 6 years, I was known myself, and I had, I think, a great deal more confidence to be a leader in the National Medical Association. So there are things that we learn by only, first of all, understanding who our personnel, who our team members are. Second, understanding the mission. We've heard about the history of the organization, and a leader must understand the history. But a leader must also be well-versed in the mechanics of the board of the organization. Even if you're involved in the scientific section or leadership as president of the National Medical Association, it's important to understand how the Board of Trustees works and how the organization works from that perspective. And also must have a shared vision of the strategic plan and the vision for that particular organization. And then finally, understanding the mission. The leader must understand the history of the organization. Again, must understand also your own strengths and your own weaknesses, and that's part of competency. Understand how you best gain consensus in the organization. We all gain consensus in a different way, but in order to be an effective leader in the National Medical Association, in order for the association to move forward, we have to have a consensus. And the president and the leaders of the organization, the section chairs, the leaders in the House, it's their responsibility to gain consensus. Be confident in your ability to advocate for your position, even if individuals may not agree with your position. Once your position is thought out well, you should be able to express it and be very confident in that position. And finally, understand how best to express your vision for the success of the organization and to obtain buy-in for the collective organizational vision for the future. So on those three little notes, when I was a student at Howard University, Moses Wharton Young was my professor in neuroanatomy, and he told us that things were always 1, 2, 3. And I learned that if I could just remember 3 things, I would usually be an effective speaker and leader. So I will conclude my remarks with those 3, and wish all of you the best of luck. Thank you.
I want to thank all of our panelists. Time is very short. Let me simply say the take-home here is be prepared. That's the Girl Scout motto. That's the Boy Scout motto. The intersection of preparation and opportunity is where the magic happens. We pray that you be prepared, that opportunities come. May God bless you all. Thanks again to this panel. Let's give them a round of applause. Is that okay?